2015. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
Present.
Mr. Frazier?
Here.
Mr. Lance? Ms. Seymour?
She's running something.
Mr. Mandelbaum is not present this evening. Ms. Jordan?
Here.
We have 4 members present.
First item on our agenda is a liquor license request for CNC.
Thank you. This request is a transfer of ownership for a 2015 tavern license for Fuddruckers. They were originally located on Woodward Avenue, and requesting the transfer of the license to the new Evergreen Road location, which is located on the corner of Evergreen and 10 Mile. All the necessary documents have been reviewed.
Excuse me, can you please speak louder? I can't hear you that well.
And have received approval by the various city departments. Mr. Habad, the owner of Fuddruckers, is present this evening. If you have any questions, following this presentation, we're recommending that you place this under the consent portion of the next regular council meeting for approval.
Okay, council, any questions? Now, any oppositions to move forward to the meeting on next Monday, Monday, October the 19th. You're all set, and you're free to go unless you have any questions you'd like to comment.
Would you like to come up and introduce yourself?
Hey, what do you want? You stand up and
Okay, my name is Saad Habba. I'm the owner of Fuddruckers in Southfield. Actually, my Fuddruckers used to be in Southfield for 6 years, and I relocated here in the city of Southfield because I saw there's a lot of improvement and a lot of future for this city. So at the same time, I tried, to transfer the license, which is beer online only, which is a new location. So I'm asking you guys to agree about this.
Mr. Lance.
You're right, I'm late. I'm supposed to be 10 years ago.
Is that it, Mr. Lance? Is that it? Okay, so we'll see you Monday.
Good day,
Give that to them. If you keep that copy of what they're doing.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
The next item on our agenda is the liquor license request to leave Southfield Evergreen Hills Golf Course.
Yes, this request is for a Class C license for our golf course here on Evergreen Road. Again, all the necessary documents and approvals have been received and approved by the city of Southfield. It's recommended that council approve this request, and that we also place this under the consent portion of the agenda. Mr. Mandelbaum is present this evening. Does council have any questions that they may have?
If I could just clarify too, this license is under a separate statutory provision for municipally owned golf courses. So as Mr. Frazier had asked, that doesn't count against any kind of our Class C quota. It's under a different section because it's a municipal owned golf course.
I thought we already approved this before. We talked about this earlier in the summer about liquor licensing, about the wood golf drill we were doing at Beechwood and so forth. So is this something new, or why didn't it happen for the summer? Because I thought we were ready for this golf season.
Well, I believe what happened is that they brought the request before council to confirm do you or don't you want liquor at Evergreen Hills Golf Course, at which time council said yes. And unfortunately, there's a process. So then, once council said yes, then they had to submit the application to Lansing, who is the control commission, and they do their own background investigation. And kind of sad, but nothing happens overnight.
We missed the season.
It's a long process, and we tried to expedite it as fast as we could, but for next year.
leads me to a question. When we acted on Evergreen Hills, there was a discussion that we wanted to wait and see how the liquor sales went at Evergreen before we proceeded at Beechwood. Is there any appetite from council to proceed with Beechwood, knowing that this process takes as long as it does?
What does it have to do with what we just said? Is that one of the-
What does it have to,
Yeah, what did you say? You want to find out how the business will go?
Evergreen Hills took time and, we'd like to get started on Beechwood.
Let's start.
Well, is there, so if there's a consensus,
What's the, in terms of the rounds that are played at Evergreen compared to?
I don't know that offhand. We can get that information and move it forward to probably the cow in November. But no, when we moved on Evergreen Hills, we thought that it would be a much quicker process and that would be up and running for this season. Well, the process took so long that we've lost this entire season. So I'd like to pursue, if there's a desire to start with Beechwood so that we can in fact have it in time for this season. I don't know the number of rounds for Beechwood offhand.
Mr. Cruz?
Mr. Martin.
In terms of the appetite for doing that, I would say yes, I think we should. I'm just curious as to, actually, I lost my train of thought. I was definitely on the appetite on that. The liquor license, is it beer wine or is it actual liquor too?
It's a Class C, but I think the intent was, when Mr. Block, I think it was to sell beer and wine, right?
Correct. Good evening, council, through the chair, it's for both beer and wine,
Okay, but no, like alcohol.
not any hard liquor.
There is.
You can,
I don't consider those.
but you can under that license, you can sell everything,
Oh, you can?
if you desire to.
Yes,
Okay.
under Class C, but a tavern is one of them.
But aren't there some restrictions, excuse me, aren't there some restrictions on Class C that you can't take it out? You can't take a drink out and walk around with it?
Yeah, you have to get that special rider for the accessory cards, those little beer cards, and so all of those have been applied for, but you're right. You have to make sure that you get the appropriate little riders to that.
Right. Is that your plan, is to have a golf cart, the beer carts?
Yes, but from behind the counter as well as the beer carts. If, through the chair, I'd like to just really quickly pass this around. Never in a million years did I think it was gonna take this long, and I've had to jump through this many hoops, but what I'm distributing is a timeline that started this past March and April. There's literally been 7 or 8 different steps through Lansing. I even contacted our city lobbyist to see if he could be of assistance. And as Ms. Banks said, it's a very lengthy process. So that's why Mr. Zorn is suggesting, and I would concur if council would like, rather than have to go through the same learning process all over again, we might as well just begin the entire process to try to get Beechwood's golf certified as well. To answer Ms. Jordan's question regarding the number of rounds, I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but usually it's about a 60-40 split. Beechwood's being 60% of the total rounds and Evergreen being 40%.
All right, council, let's take a consensus as to if we want Mr. Block to move forward on securing the liquor license for Beechwood now. Mr. Lance,
I'm in favor.
Mr. Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier.
Yes.
Ms. Sims.
Yes.
And I say yes as well. So we can move forward on
Okay.
Beechwood, so we'll be ready for next year's.
Yes.
Shouldn't it take shorter, they've already done all the investigations? No, I'll get you criminal.
It's a different location, so
You
they
would
gotta
hope
look at
so,
the
it
building.
is a different location, but usually they have to go through the same vetting process
Okay.
as any extra candidate would.
And Let me ask you this, how do you monitor to make sure no one will walk out intoxicated? How do you
That's what
monitor?
Joe Spatafor, who we brought on this past February. He's our part-time concessionaire. He has a lot of experience. There's basically going to be a wristband introduced as a control mechanism, and the rangers, the starters, as well as Mr. Spatafor's team will be monitoring that at both courses.
Okay, thank you. So this will move forward our consent agenda on October.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is the RISAC presentation and to adopt their article of corporations.
Madam President, we have a request from the Resource Recovery and Recycling Authority, Southwestern Oakland County, to approve at the October 19th meeting as a consent item an amendment to their Articles of Incorporation, which will add the Township of Milford and the Village of Milford to the Articles of Incorporation. Articles of Incorporation were prepared by Miller Canfield, legal counsel for ROSAC, and Mike Sapel, their general manager, is here this evening.
Thanks for having me. It was a good night for me to be here because I enjoyed the Community Pride Awards, and I was reminded maybe 15 years ago when businesses were a category, we won down at 8 Evergreen. So looking forward to business being a category again. Maybe we can again. But we were approached earlier this year by the Village of Milford, Milford Township, about joining the authority. And we took it to our board of directors who unanimously approved allowing those two communities to be members of our authority. And it made sense for all parties involved. It increases our purchasing power, allows us to spread our administrative costs out over more units. And it provides our residents with access to additional events. Currently, the village and the township have a joint household hazardous waste collection event, very similar to what we do in our communities, including one October 17th, by the way, here in Southfield, behind our recycling facility at Evergreen. But our residents, including Southfield residents, will be able to attend that event in the village if, in fact, they become members of our authority. The process is pretty straightforward. We're chartered under Act 179, 1947, which establishes solid waste authorities. And the process is that once the authority board of directors consents to allowing the process to begin, then the candidate communities have to adopt our Articles of Incorporation as amended. And then each of our constituent communities, existing constituent communities, have to also adopt the amended state articles. Last week's South Line adopted them. We're looking for Southfield to have a consensus on them this evening. Next week I'll be going to the city of Novi. The following week I'll be in Farmington. We'll continue that process until each of our member communities have adopted those amended state articles. So we're looking for your blessing on the adopted amended articles. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah, Mike, just to, I mean, this might sound like a no-brainer, but I don't ever think something's obvious. So don't be offended by the question, but with adding these new communities, one might think, or somebody might think, well, we will have less service, but I presume you will have more employees and more trucks to handle these new communities.
Well, in fact, the authority really only has a couple of employees. We really are in the business of contract management and administering these programs to the benefit of your residents. And so your contractors have, for example, your current curbside contractor, Waste Management, they have the requisite number of trucks and employees to service this community and will do so under contract with the city. The candidate communities, they have their own contractors, and so it won't take resources away from any of our existing communities, but rather it will provide additional resources, increased purchasing power, we'll have a bigger voice. We're talking to policymakers in Lansing, for example, and will provide access to additional services as we have events in a greater geographic area. It increases the opportunities for residents. For example, in next May in the village, they'll have that hazardous waste collection, and if one of your residents can't make any of the other ones that we have in the spring, they always have that one out in Milford they can drive to on it. You know, if they're on their way out to Kensington, they can, you know, take their hazardous materials out to the village on that day as well. So it doesn't detract from the community or the service to the residents, it really provides opportunity to enhance it.
In other words, you're not being spread too thin because it's
No.
not the way you're organized.
Exactly right.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
Yeah. I don't think you have anything to do with writing this resolution. It seemed a little odd to me when I was reading the resolution that since the village of Milford and Township Board, or the Township of Milford, are not part of it yet, why they would be in the voting. The whereas, this council on behalf of the city of Southfield, County of Oakland, state of Michigan, together with the city councils of the cities of Farmington, Farmington Hills, Novi, South Lyon, Walled Lake, and Vixen, the village council of the village of Milford, and the township board of the charter township Milford have deemed it reasonable and necessary to amend and restate the articles of incorporation. Of course they would. They want to get involved.
Right, they want to be part of it.
But why do they get it? Shouldn't they be silent? Let the ones that are already part of them say, yeah, you can come in, be part of it.
But if they didn't adopt the articles, then they wouldn't have approved them, so they couldn't come in. So it's like everybody in this group of cities, or whatever, townships, villages, have to adopt these restated and amended articles for it to be effective.
Yeah, that's the way the law is written, is that the candidate communities first adopt the amended and restated articles, and then that's their formal and official sign that to our existing constituent communities that they want to be involved. And so the resolutions are written such that, okay, now that they've adopted it, the rest of us are going to adopt the amended articles as well, and then we can file them and register them appropriately.
Okay, if you say so. I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard of somebody that's not part of the organization voting to make me a member. Get to.
And you're right, they understand law, they kind of have to vote themselves in.
Okay.
But everybody else gets a say in it after they vote themselves in. Everybody else, all the other communities get to say, okay, yeah, you're welcome.
What if the rest of the community said no?
Then they're not in. And in fact, all of our member communities, existing member communities, have to vote in the affirmative to adopt the amended articles. If one of our communities feels that one of these new communities shouldn't be involved, then this dies on the vine.
Okay, now did the township of Lyon vote before they hit the road? They're the ones that dropped out?
Yeah, they administratively have pulled out. Yeah, they don't have to adopt. They don't have to vote on these amended articles. All we have to do is act on their request to withdraw. And frankly, they don't provide their residents with any services whatsoever. The homeowners out in South Lyon Township are paying enormous amounts to dispose of their trash, and they have no access to services like they do here in Southfield. So it doesn't make sense for them to do it anyway.
Okay, thanks.
It's probably great, I don't know. Said there might be a reduction in administrative, operational costs. About how much, like, what are we spending now, what might be the potential, reduction in cost for us? with this
Well,
change?
our administrative fees are based on a per capita basis, and right now the city's paying about $89,000 a year to cover our administrative costs. It's our second largest city, they're paying the second biggest amount. The two communities combined would add just under $20,000 to our administrative costs. So, you know, to be quite honest with you, what's probably going to do more than anything is help us to keep from having to raise our rates. We haven't raised our rates in years, and we've been really trying to keep as sharp as pencil as we can so we don't have to do that. And what this will do is help us forestall that. But if you're looking at the whole scheme of things, you know, Farmington Hills and Southfield being our, by far, our largest communities, followed by Novi, you know, paid most of our administrative costs, and these two communities will add a small portion to that. But, you know, again, it's allowing us to spread those costs out over you know, another 15,000, 16,000 in terms of population. So it's not a huge addition, but it's something, and everything counts. And the other thing it does is it provides us with a couple more communities that are part of our package of communities when we put out bids to the private sector, because that's really where your lion's share of your costs are, with your private sector haulers, your private sector service providers to your household hazardous waste collection, when you're looking to get rid of the trash and the recycling your city facilities, that's where your real costs come in. And so when we put our bid packages out, or negotiate contracts for that matter, it gives us more purchasing power and helps, leverage the city's opportunities in that regard.
Is that it, Mr. Frazier?
Yeah, how's your building coming?
Our building is done. They are working on the pits. We've ordered new equipment. I will tell you, it's been a long and arduous process. I don't wish going through this on anybody, but I can tell you that the building looks great. About a $4.3 million repair job. We've got our certificate of compliance in the building department. Everything went very well with the building department in the city. The new equipment has been ordered. It will be operational hopefully before spring. Our timeline is March 24th, but we're hoping to accelerate that. It's going to be about a $9.2 million investment in equipment alone in the building. About a little less than 2.7 will be from the authority, which will be insurance proceeds, and then the remainder, $6 million plus, is going to be from our private sector operators investing their own capital in that facility.
Now, I know it was a bad way to start out, but now that you're repairing the building, does this give you an opportunity to do some things that you would have liked to have done, but the other equipment wouldn't allow you to do it? Single line and.
Well, absolutely. What it's really done is given us an opportunity to have a clean slate. And if you recall, when this facility was built in '94, it was what we call the dual stream facility, where you separate the papers from glass, plastic, and metal, and it got tipped twice and picked up separately at the curb, dumped twice at the plant, and processed separately. And it's just an inefficient way of doing it, and that's not state of the art. When we retrofitted the facility in 2011 to single stream, it was a good move, except that you're tying two old systems together, and it still wasn't how you design it from scratch. What this has allowed us to do is a complete blank slate. We're coming in with brand new systems, state-of-the-art system. It's being built as we speak. It's a European design. It's really going to be state-of-the-art. It's going to be the most state-of-the-art facility in the state of Michigan. Prior to the fire, it was the highest capacity facility in the state of Michigan, but it will be the most technologically advanced facility in the state of Michigan once it's up and running. So, these things all have silver linings, and I think that's one of them.
Now, right now you don't pick up styrofoam. Will you pick up styrofoam?
We will not be picking up styrofoam. Styrofoam, there's no market for styrofoam. You can't make any money on it. The only place to take it is dark container, and they won't give you any money for it. It's too light, it contaminates other materials, and you just can't process styrofoam at the curb. It really is something we encourage people not to use. We used to take it at our drop-off site. When we reopen our drop-off site, it's actually up near whether or not we will resume taking it. There are other avenues for that. But the challenge with styrofoam is it comes from everywhere. It begins to overflow our site. People come on the weekends, and we find ourselves in a constant state of ordinance violation, much to the chagrin of the building and ordinance enforcement department. And so we want to be a good neighbor to everybody. And so there's a good chance we will not resume taking styrofoam. We're going to continue to evaluate that to get closer to opening. We'll continue to take it at a drop-off basis, all the other materials that we take at the curb, and we will begin probably well before we open to resume taking electronic waste at our site in Southfield, because those are good solid markets for all those materials. But styrofoam is particularly troublesome, takes a lot of labor, causes a lot of litter, and it's just something you can't sell.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Mr. Zorn.
Mike, just for the council's knowledge, Mike was appointed to the governor's recycle task force, is that the right?
Recycling council.
So we're very fortunate to have him on that. Mike, if you could touch on the business interruption insurance, we changed our insurance carrier, and then the impact on recyclables and how that money comes back to the community.
Sure. Well, there really hasn't been a significant impact in terms of curbside service or performance of the overall program as a result of the fire for a couple of reasons. One is that we have good coverage through Liberty Mutual to cover not just our building and equipment, but business interruption and extra expenses. So, for example, a lot of the revenue that we would have otherwise not been able to accrue over the course of the past year and a half or so, we've been able to get covered by insurance proceeds. Another thing that we're fortunate is because we have a public-private partnership with an operator that has 30 31 of these types of facilities across the country, including two right here in Metro Detroit that they own and operate, and one in Ann Arbor that's owned by the city of Ann Arbor and they operate. We're able to divert the material that's picked up in Southfield down to those other locations for processing and shipment to market. And one of the things that we had the benefit of through our insurance coverage is that extra expense being covered. So Waste Management was billing our communities for the ones that are their customers, Farmington, Farmington Hills, Wixom, and Southfield, billing those communities collectively between $15,000 and $20,000 a month, and take that material to the alternate site, which is down here in Township. As you can imagine, it's not right around the corner, and it takes some time to get down there. So they rightfully were, billing their cost to take it to the alternate facility. Insurance covered that, and so we'll be able to reimburse the city for a year's worth of those costs. And then our new arrangement with our private operator is that they are now going to cover those costs until our facility's up and running. So any additional costs the city will have incurred through their contract to hauler waste management are being covered by either the insurance coverage or our private operator, so that the curbside program can continue unfettered, unimpacted, and the city's finances are also unimpacted by the incident.
All right, this will be placed on our consent agenda as well for Monday.
Thank you.
Madam President, the next item also pertains to our solid waste disposal contract bid. And I've asked Mike to speak to our dashboard metrics. Our contract with Waste Management expired June 30th of 2016. And in anticipation of going out to bid for that document, I wanted to have a dialogue with council regarding dashboard metrics and performance.
So every year we do these dashboard metrics where we look at your program performance, the amount of waste generated, your recycling rates. Every couple of years we also update the per capita and per household expenditure figures. We deep dive into municipal budgets throughout Southeast Michigan, looking at about 40 communities, because we want to do the analytics and we want to compare your program performance and look at those metrics relative to comparable communities throughout Southeast Michigan. And the United States, for that matter, in terms of some of the performance metrics. So a couple of figures that I just wanted to share. One of the things that we look at are your rubbish and recycling expenditures that's in your sanitation budget on a per capita basis, and what are you spending versus what other communities are spending. And what we find invariably is that you're at the lower end of the spectrum, and in fact you're 36% below the median in Southeast Michigan in terms of per capita expenditures on rubbish and recycling. And why that is because, one, the city keeps a very sharp pencil. The administration and the council work diligently with the municipal budget to make sure that they're spending the money wisely. Two, as a member of the authority, you get very good rates for your contract, because we work hard on making sure that you're getting purchasing power and getting the best practices deployed at a good price. And then the other obvious reason is because you're a member of the authority, there's no cost to tip your recyclables at the recycling facility. Some communities don't enjoy that, and particularly in these down commodity markets, which if you follow the commodity markets at all, the commodity prices are down. And we have an arrangement with our private operator where our communities and their haulers never have to pay to tip those materials, even when the commodity markets are down. And when the commodity markets are high, the authority and our communities share in the revenue from the sale of those materials, and so that then is turned back to the community on a prorated basis based on the performance of the community and how many tons they contribute to the process. So in terms of how many tons the community contributes, I would mention that, let me see, last year you recycled just over 2,000 tons of material. Your household hazardous waste was about 39 tons, and I'm looking at 2014 metrics. And your yard waste was about 4,850 tons. And if you want to put that into environmental terms, because you can run these numbers through life cycle analysis and come up with some figure to see what you did in terms of environmental preservation and environmental activity, you saved 55 billion BTU which is the energy equivalent of 545 households. You reduced airborne pollution by 6,190 tons. You reduced waterborne pollution by 123 tons. You conserved about 334 tons of mined resources, and you preserved 41,228 trees. And so in terms of the environmental impact of your curbside recycling program, it's very high and something to be proud of. Your overall recycling rate was 33.33%. Now, that's a good number if you compare that to the national average, which is about 34% to 34.5%. That's about the Great Lakes average as well. So there's a little, you could improve a little bit. In terms of Michigan's overall rate, Michigan just did a study this spring. We're only at 14.5% statewide. So the city's doing very well relative to the national norms and the state average. However, there is room for improvement. If you look at some of our other high-performing communities, like Farmington, for example, which was just recognized earlier this year by the state as being the third highest in the state at over 50%, and a city like Farmington Hills that's hovering around 46%. There's some opportunities for improvements here in Southfield. And I view there's two important ways how we can accomplish that. One is just through greater outreach and education, just letting residents know the why, the how, and the what of recycling. And we continue to work in that regard with the city and the city administration, and we're going to do even more of that in the coming months. COSOP was just recently awarded a grant from the state of Michigan to deploy an outreach and education program in the city, where we're going to do some direct mail piece directly to our households, but then also take the show on the road, if you will, and talk directly with community groups and homeowners associations about how to recycle, why to recycle, and trying to improve upon the program performance, sharing that message, the economic value, the environmental value of recycling, and then also explain to people how to recycle. One of the things that we know is that the set-out rate in our community of Southfield isn't as good as it could be. And I think, quite frankly, it's probably a lot to do with the fact that you haven't had a big bin distribution in a very long time, and these bins are useful for a lot of things other than just recyclables. They are great for your sporting goods and your kindling at your at the campground or your place up north. If you flip one over, you can set a TV on in your dorm room. And so I think a lot of them dissipate over the time, and we need to let residents know if they move into a home they don't have a recycling bin, they need to know how to get one, because they may not know that they're even missing one, because if they moved from a community that doesn't recycle, they don't know what they don't know. And so we want to let people know how to get a recycling bin. Now, the other thing that we think will have a bigger impact on the recycling rate in the city is if you consider moving to cart collection. And we talked about this a few years back, going to the larger carts. And we did this in 3 of our communities, Wixom, Farmington Hills, in 2012. And what we saw was 2 things. One is big increase in recycling. In Farmington Hills, which was already a fairly high-performing community, we saw an increase of 60%. And it makes sense. If you have 1 small bin or 2 small bins, once those are full, the rest of your recyclables are going to go in your trash can. But if you have a bigger cart on wheels with a lid, you can just keep putting recyclables in and wheel out to the street on collection day. The other thing is people, it turns out they love their carts. They're very heavy, they have wheels, they have lids, and they can just take a lot of material. We have the rural stamps right on the lid with the Department of Public Works number. If they have any problem with the collection, they have a direct contact there at the DPW. And so there's an opportunity there to improve upon program performance and maybe the convenience level for residents if we switch to carts. Now, having said that, carts aren't for everyone, and the big carts certainly aren't for everyone. So what we did in Farmington Hills, Farmington, and Wixom was we offered 3 different cart sizes. A smaller one that's more like a trash can size, 35 gallons. One that's a 64-gallon cart, which is the default size that most people use and love. And then there's even a larger one, a 96-gallon. And you'll see in our communities all 3 are deployed. And most people, though, do gravitate towards that average 64-gallon size cart. Now, there's 2 ways you could go about switching to carts. As Fred said, your contract with your current waste-to-solid waste management is up June 30th. Now, between now and then, you can do one of 2 things. You can negotiate an extension with them or a new contract. That's certainly something the city has done in the past. Or you could put this out on the street with request for proposals and bids and look at the different proposals that will come in from the private sector service providers. What I would recommend is that in the context of either a negotiation or a request for proposal, you look at two different options. Option one being you keep your bins and you allow homeowners to opt in for a card. So for those homeowners that want a card and are willing to pay for a card, they can buy a card, and then your curbside service provider, whoever it is, for the same price as servicing a bin, can service a card. And that can be done. It's happening elsewhere in the metro area, and it's a matter of having the right piece of equipment on the front of the truck, a card tipper, so that the driver can service either a bin or a card. And that's one option. The value of that option is that you don't force cards on everybody, and for those people that want a card and are willing to pay for a card, they can have a card. The downside of that is you don't give everybody the opportunity to find out how cool a card is and how much they'll love it once they get it, and you certainly don't get the same level of penetration. And if you go that route, you're still going to want to go into a robust outreach and education campaign to let people know, here's how you get a card if you want one, and if you don't want a card but you don't have a bin either, here's how you get a bin. And that's something I would recommend that we do. The other option would be to just spec out everybody gets a card, like we did in Farmington, Farmington Hills, and many other communities in the metropolitan area going towards. That's considered best practices. We're looking at some opportunities, if you do go that route, to offset some of your potential costs through grants and some national programs where they're helping communities pay for these cards. But by and large, what you end up finding is when you spec out cards in either your negotiations or your RFP, that the contractor will provide them, build those costs into the program, and we recommend in that case going with the longer contract, that you're amortizing those capital costs out over a longer period of time. And most typically, you're going to see it in an 8-year contract, which the city has had in the past, but you can certainly do it with a 5-year contract with an opportunity to extend. But we'd recommend a minimum of 5 years either way to take advantage of some of the opportunities that are in the marketplace right now, both with the pricing that's been out there in the market, and as well as the opportunity to acquire cards and cut these costs out over a reasonable period of time. And again, that would really bolster your performance in terms of the recycling of the cards. What the thing that we're looking forward to doing is helping the city council and the administration in whatever path they take in terms of the program specifications, and whether you go through contract negotiation and extension, or bid it out, as Fred mentioned, is probably the recommended approach. We stand ready to assist and put those approaches together, whichever the council decides. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
All right, council, any questions? Mr. Frazier.
Yes, the 14% that you said is average for Michigan.
Yes.
Is that all of Michigan, even though communities that don't have garbage service, or is that for just the cities that have the garbage service, but it's
that's statewide, so that considers some areas where there is very little service. You're looking at total amount landfilled, total amount of solid waste generated, total amount of yard waste generated, total amount recycled, and then coming up with this percentage. So what that points out to us is that there are vast parts of the state that don't recycle and don't have access to services, and the Government Recycling Council and administration are working on that. But even when you look at some of your communities that have good service, good access, some of them are still running much lower than they could be because they're stuck in with lack of outreach and education, lack of trying to advocate that their residents recycle, and then lack of having the most advantageous system, which is again the cards. But there are really the large population areas of Michigan. Most people do recycle, most people do have access, but not everybody's recycling as well as they could.
Yeah, and one of the things that you said is that if your tub is full, then the rest of it goes in the garbage. And I know when we first went into recycling, there used to be, somebody periodically they'd look through people's recycling and say, you're doing a good job, and all. maybe that's one of the things that can happen, that, you know, if you wanna increase the education on recycling. Because I know, you can tell by looking at the tub, what is being recycled, and whether they're doing a good job of putting the right things in the tub. You don't know if they're putting the wrong things in the bags, in the garbage, so.
Right, and that's a tough thing to get to, but we have noticed from other areas that have done those types of waste sorts that of your average recycler, about 13% of everything that's in their trash can could have gone in their recycling cart or recycling bin. So even people that are recycling aren't always recycling as well as they can.
Right.
And, you know, we want to encourage people, the jargon we're using now is to recycle right. And, you know, make sure that the stuff you put in your cart or your bin is something that's truly recyclable. And make sure that everything that is in your trash can or trash bag is stuff that you can't recycle.
Right.
And we want to continue to get that message out. And we think a lot of it has to do with just education and let people know what their options are, and continue to be as informed as possible.
You know, one of the things that, if we're gonna reconsider or consider the tubs, one of the things that keeps popping up periodically is code enforcement going out, and people have their tubs in sight, you know, they're not out of sight.
Right.
So if we go to bins, you know, that might be a concern that we need to address, because for those folks that don't have another place to store it.
Store it, right?
Yeah, still, so, I'm not against it, but
Right.
it's something that we need to take into consideration. We don't want to turn good folks into angry folks.
Right.
And what we've experienced in other communities, and most other communities have gone to carts, is that water does find its own level. People do find a place to put it. In most cases, for example, the footprint of the bin is about the same as the footprint of the larger carts. And so wherever you were putting your bin, you can now put your cart. And recognizing that there are still going to be some people that just aren't going to find a place for that, that's not outside and potentially in sight. And that is where the city has to recognize if it's making a policy decision to provide a more convenient service that has higher program performance, it needs to recognize that there's going to be some give and take in terms of some of the aesthetic issues.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Mr. Cruz?
Yeah, I just one point to make, or maybe just a question to you. For years at Open Community College where I work, I've been chair of the sustainability committee, and we've always done events with some other companies in terms of recycling, waste, and everything like that. I was wondering, since you are moving in the direction of greater education and outreach, have you, or would you consider moving through some of the institutions that might be around the area, and maybe K-12 for that matter? I mean, if we can get the younger kids involved in thinking about this stuff early is good.
Well, as a matter of fact, we do that. A couple of things. We have an event at OCC at the Orchard Ridge campus every year, our big household hazardous waste event that Farmington Hills and Farmington jointly host, to which a lot of Southfield residents attend. And it's an event that with cooperation of OCC. We have relationships with a couple of OCC instructors and professors in the science department that regularly bring their students for tours of our facility, and as part of the regular curriculum. Unfortunately, since our fire last year, that's kind of been put on the back burner, pun intended. But we intend to resurrect that. And then the other thing that we do a lot of work with K-12, and unfortunately, tours of facilities have gone down over the years just because of the lack of transportation opportunities with K-12. But we continue to work with them, do presentations to K-12 groups and all, you know, age group Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, what have you. And in fact, on Saturday, we had a big household hazardous waste event out in Nova. I had about 1,800 cars go through. And after that event, I met with 5 different groups of robotics students, because the robotics challenge this year is waste and recycling. And so we've been meeting with the robotics students, giving them tours. One of the advantages that we have with having this partner that owns a facility down here in Township is we can send our students from Southfield and our other communities down there for a tour, and they've been going down there for tours. 800 students last year from the Farmington Hills District went through that facility, and we've been going to robotics students every year. But it's a great point, reaching out to the kids, working with the community colleges. And then one last thing, we recently made contact with Lawrence Tech, because one of the things that we want to do is take advantage of their resources there with their 3D printer. And what we want is a tabletop 3D model of our facility once it's rebuilt with our state-of-the-art equipment. So we're hoping that we can get them the right files and they can print that out for us and we can have that for show and tell.
Right, Mayor Picasso.
No, I'm good. I'm good for right now.
I see Mr. Conway is here from Waste Management. Are there any comments that you'd like to write in?
Sure. Thank you, Council President, members of council, Mayor. Brian Conway, Waste Management, Michigan. As you all know, that we're currently your solid waste provider. And survey, there is an item here that talks about bidding your contract. And I'm here to ask for an opportunity to talk with the city about extending the contract. We've been preparing to present some numbers to Mike Sable and to Rossar, as has been the process in the past, each of the prior years of extending. We were here about 2.5 years ago, going through this process of an extension, and we were successful. There were a number of rounds of negotiation that occurred, but we reached a ground where the city was satisfied, and so was Waste Management. I don't see why, at this point, we're not getting that opportunity. I'm asking this council to provide us that opportunity. We have been a service provider here for a number of years. You have gone out to bid in the past. I believe that if anyone knows numbers and what comparative rates are throughout Southeast Michigan and gosh, throughout the state, Mike Sable knows that information. It's no secret, it's all public. There are some comparisons that need to be made. Certainly those comparisons can be brought forth through a negotiation process. So that is my request tonight of the City Council, not to put this out to bid, but to give us an opportunity to negotiate the extension.
Mayor Picasso.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we were here for another item. Whether or not we're going to extend the contract to Waste Management or hear what Waste Management will do. I intend to go out for bid because I think I can save money for the city by going to bid. And I'm not for any extension unless we go to bid. I'm sorry to say that, Mr. Conway, but there are contracts being done right now that would save the city a lot of money. It's getting very competitive, and we haven't gone to bid. I don't know, have we ever gone to bid?
2008.
When was it?
2008.
2008, well, that's a long time ago. And things have changed in the business. And so, Madam Chair, we're gonna have Mr. Conway here, and the other people here, there's other waste, other people out there in the marketplace. Benoni just settled a real big contract, and I wanna see what's out there.
Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Picasso? Well, I just happen to think our current contract with Waste Management, in my opinion, is they've done a great job. I guess I'm not seeing the need to go out for bid, possibly work with them, and we can do a consensus.
Well, Madam Chair, that's really out of order.
How
It
is
really
that
is out of order. It's not on the
it's not.
agenda. It's not on the agenda.
It's
And
on
I
the
asked what
agenda.
other, no, what's on the agenda is red soccer.
No, if you
No,
go
we
to
got
the
no-
next one, it is.
That's
on
different.
No, but it doesn't ask for bids, whether we go out for bids or not.
It's saying that, it's on the next one. It's
I
on
seen
the
both of them. I
It's
seen
not
both. I do my
it's
homework.
not out of order. And I'm saying that.
Mr. Conway then can tell me how much of Livonia is under contract just now. You lost a contract with them, and how much did they
That is
save?
correct.
All right.
I
And
can
we're
tell
talking
you-
about millions of dollars, Madam Chair, that's millions of dollars
Right.
coming out of the taxpayer's pocket.
And I think we should give them an opportunity, as
Yeah.
we've done with other companies.
So you bring them
to
forward,
discuss-
so you bring them
to
forward,
discuss
to bring them forward.
We can give them that same opportunity to discuss the numbers, to make sure that we get
Well, I'm gonna make sure
the
that
best
that's
price
done.
for the residents.
We'll make sure that's done.
Absolutely. Mr. Zoll.
Madam President, Council, this item is in front of you. Rawsack was coming in on the amended statements. I wanted to inform council that this is on the administration's radar screen. The contract expires next June. Wanted to get feedback. I don't believe it's any displeasure with the existing contract, and from the day-to-day operations, I get like very, very, very few complaints. We're all aware of a golf course club thing that was probably the biggest complaint I've had in the past 2 or 3 years. But no displeasure with the service. Just one council, this was last out in 2008. It's been, it'll be 8 years. So we're gonna begin preparing the bid and put it out on the street. This is, in every community, we're reading the headlines. This is a big item. These are, can be very controversial, challenging issues, but I think we need to get out there on the street. And I also wanted to let the council know that we are looking at possibly introducing additional recycling options for our residents. And Mike did mention this, there was also some discussion about possible grants for the cycles, for the new carts too.
Yeah, we'll be looking for
What he
those
said, people
opportunities.
pay for it, it can be done a number of ways.
Madam Chair? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Fraser had his hand.
Go ahead.
I'm just
You
gonna
actually
say-
still have the floor.
No, I was just gonna say, there's a whole thing to discuss. We have an ordinance that doesn't allow anything on the side of the houses or in front, all right? And you either have to put this cart either in the garage, and sometimes there's 2 of them, or put them someplace in your backyard, all right? When you get through the present way that we're doing things, after the rubbish picker is done, all you have is one little waste management container to deal with. The other way, you've got 2 carts to deal with. And you get into this fall time when people got all kinds of yard waste, you know, and then you got things, today, everything that is picked up is picked up. And you go down the street afterwards, if you got 10 bags, 20 bags, 30 bags, everything is cleaned up. All the materials are picked up, everything fit, construction materials, all right? When you have the carts, people are not gonna be able to get all their stuff sometimes in those carts. Why we found that without spring cleanup, you no longer have people dumping in our empty lots. They're not throwing it into somebody's house that's empty. Everything is getting picked up in the community. We have a clean community because of that. And our people are used to doing it. There's education, of course, that has to be done in places where there's a problem on both sides.
And we're proposing the same level of service, but with the discussion about larger recycled carts as an add-on, an addendum to the bid.
Yeah, and if I may, Madam Chair, we are not recommending cars for trash. Some communities have gone to cars for trash. We certainly don't recommend that as an approach. We think that the homeowner provided trash can or the homeowner provided bags continue to be the best option and most convenient for homeowners. For the reasons that Mr. Perkowski just stated, if you go to the trash cart model, then everything has to fit in that cart, and what doesn't fit in that cart is a problem. We think that homeowners have the right to set out their refuse at the curb and see it all go away at their convenience, and that's what we recommend. The only thing that we're recommending you do differently in the future, again, whether you negotiate a contract or go out for bid, is to introduce the option of going from the smaller recycling bins to the larger carts, or give everybody recycling carts. But certainly, under both circumstances, keep the option of the homeowner provided trash can, the homeowner provided garbage bag, because at the end of the day, if someone's just sending out a bunch of garbage bags, those are all gone when the vendor is done on that street, and the only thing left is that recycling receptacle, either the bin or the larger cart. In one case, you roll it back up to the garage, in the other case, you carry it back up to the garage.
Yes, if we go to the carts, does that mean that the equipment that on your trucks has to change?
We currently use a Corrado can on the front of the truck to pick up the material. That can be retrofitted with a cart tipper. So that would be the only changes, the Corrado can.
Well, the one that comes down my street, there's a little step on the back end of the truck, stops in front of the house, and the guy gets off and picks up the garbage and puts it in the back end of the truck. So there's nothing on the front of the truck, it's a mechanic, there's a man on the back of the truck.
Yeah, we have both here in the city.
Okay. And this is whether we extend the contract or go out for bids. Incidentally, I think we should probably go out for bids, because if it's a competitive bid, you you shouldn't be afraid to meet your competition and beat the competition, and then we still have waste management, if you can beat them. But one of the things that we have, that I see periodically, is for those large things, if it's a house clean out, or if it's, somebody puts a lot of stuff on there, a lot of times it doesn't get picked up. And I can understand the truck going by, there's too much for that truck to pick up. But I'd like to see negotiated, whatever kind of contract we have, that driver and that truck communicates with somebody immediately that says, I just passed this house and I did not pick up the stuff because it was too much, so somebody else can get out there. Because I've gone down the street a week later and stuff is still sitting out there. And that's not how we want our community to look. So however we do it, I think that ought to be part of the contract, that there's some communication, whether it's to our public works, or if it's, they have to bring another truck along that outfitted to pick up large quantities, but it should be cleaned up the same day as the trash pickup.
That's correct. It should be.
And that's how it should be now.
Yeah,
That's part of the
but it
contract.
isn't.
It's a breakdown in communication.
I saw a pile of limbs, a brush, not big ones, but brush, that should have been picked up, set out in front of a place, in front of a house, so long that killed the grass underneath when they finally picked it up. So,
No, we should have that.
that's it.
Just wanted to say that certainly understand and appreciate the comments this evening. Do know that we've gone through competitive bids, and those are benchmarks. If those benchmarks are out there, which they are, that is certainly a starting point for negotiation. So appreciate the time, and thank you very much. Again, ask you for the opportunity to negotiate an extension with the city. Thanks.
All right, thank you. Okay, the next item on our agenda is an update on oil and mining.
So I'm not sure what, I'm sorry about the truck, so what are we doing with this? Are we, do we need a consensus on anything? Are we saying yes or no to?
So the current contract is expires next year in administration.
So this is just information?
Yes, it's just,
Looking just for consensus.
you want a consensus?
Yeah. I
Okay, let's
would.
do consensus, as did,
To go out for bid?
to go out for bid or not.
That's what I thought we were doing.
Okay, let's do that. Mr. Lance?
I imagine it's a good thing they are.
Mr. Cruz?
Definitely go out for bid.
Mr. Frazier?
Good.
You see, yes, I'm satisfied with you. It's consensus.
I'm satisfied, but I think we should go up with it just to know what's
Get
going
the
on.
best dollar we can.
Yeah. We can always negotiate after that.
All right, the next item on the agenda is an update on the oil and gas mining tax amendment.
Good evening. If you recall, about a year ago, we had some preliminary investigation in one of our parks for possible mineral exploration. And the council put a moratorium so that we could do some further research. That moratorium was extended until October 31st, 2015. Now, I've included information in your packet to show that we've made a lot of progress on this study. As a matter of fact, the Planning Commission held a public hearing last Wednesday with a recommendation, with the hopes that we were gonna come here for a study session and have council act on this at your next meeting. But in the course of our review, we found more questions were asked than we could answer at this time, especially as it relates to city-owned property and mineral rights. We're working with the Parks and Rec Department, and Mary Carlock, our former employee, has been assisting us. But we need to do some more due diligence on what rights the state actually has on exploration, drilling, and mining in city-owned property. We had an approach to regulate this to industrial districts, but given the fact that our moratorium is expiring at the end of the month, and we still need to do some more research, we're gonna come back in 2 weeks under consent and ask that the council consider extending one more time 180 days. And we'll come back, that should give us enough time to go back through the process, with both study of the council, public hearing, adoption, and so forth. We wanted to show you that we have made progress, we haven't neglected it, but, there are a number of questions that are still unanswered, that we need more information from the state, working with the city attorney office. We think it's advisable to ask for one more moratorium. And it's really just an update at this point, but if the council has any questions at this time, we will be coming back in 2 weeks asking for an extension of the moratorium.
Council, any questions? Mr. Frazier?
Yeah, a question. With horizontal drilling, let's say that we write an ordinance that says they can drill on city property. But with horizontal drilling, could there be a possibility that they would be 2 lots over and do horizontal drilling on our property, and if there was oil there?
So, what we found, the University of Michigan recently came out with a study, after 3 years, and they say the typical well is 10,000 feet deep, which is almost 2 miles, and that they can extend up to 2 miles horizontally. So in essence, they could come from an adjacent community to come underground. They could come from an adjacent property and actually drill the mineral rights that they may be allowed to via the state. What the state says is the city can regulate above ground structures and surfaces. And so our approach is to, because there's impacts on the height of the drill, the size of the drill, the cesspool of brine and other things. That's the area that we have control of. Anything underground is regulated by the state. So our approach is to try to minimize the negative influences above ground, not so much underground. But we need to do further information about what we can and can't do on public land that was acquired with state funds, that they retain the mineral rights. And it seems like we still have some control of what happens above ground, not what's underground. And our approach was, if we regulated it to industrial districts, as far as above ground exploration, they're still gonna be able to tap into most of our community underground. But it's the noise, the size, the trucks coming and going, the brine pools, the lighting, that we wanna definitely regulate so it doesn't have a negative impact.
And again, those are the things the state allows you to regulate
Right.
on the local basis.
So
And
on
the other-
horizontal drilling, the wellhead would be over in the other community anyhow.
It could
So-
be, yeah.
So we wouldn't have any reason to say anything anyhow.
Yeah, but if we do regulate it to industrially zoned property that's in the city, or we have to further explore if we want to do some testing through our parks, then we can regulate some of the unintended consequences, so to speak.
Yeah.
And again, this study that was just recently released from U of M was only 2 weeks ago. And it raised more questions than it did provide answers at this point. The one thing that we feel is important is that our approach encourages and allows for public participation. And that's one of the results of the study, that people need to have more input on the process. We eventually will get up to Lansing when they're considering permitting. So we don't want to necessarily rely just on the state to look at our best interest. We want to have a process that we can control to the extent that we can, input on them granting these permits.
Well, one of the things is, I didn't have a feeling one way or the other. I just felt that they're doing their job. But recently, with the problems that Flint is having with the water, the MDEQ has really taken a hit. And there's a professor out of Virginia Tech that's a world's expert in water quality that says that MDEQ has done a terrible job of trying to ameliorate the water problem on Flint. So I don't know if we're dealing with the same people on drilling for oil as they're doing with water quality. I don't know if, it almost goes back to the hurricane through New Orleans. Like, you're doing a heck of a job, Brownie. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you think about the federal, Department of Environmental Quality, they were the ones that released all that toxic mining
Yeah,
into the Colorado River.
yeah,
So we have to be our own advocates in this case. I think,
Right.
For what we have control over.
does give me a warm feeling that they got our back. So, okay.
Ms. Seymour.
Yeah, Terry, if I understand this, land that we have that was purchased with state funds, they could drill underneath and through it. Can they drill, for example, we have a lot of wetlands, a lot of natural areas that we have, Carpenter Lake being the biggest, more than a wetland, obviously. So, we have no control over that?
Well, there was preliminarily 7 properties that were identified that were acquired through state funds.
Okay, can you say what they are?
Bedford Woods, parts of Valley Woods Nature Preserve,
What was the second one?
Valley Woods Nature Preserve,
Valley Woods.
parts of it.
Okay.
Section 25 Mini Park, Stratford Woods Commons, Meyer Lee property, Hunters Lane Woods, Section 24 Wetlands, Lincoln Woods Nature Preserve, Evergreen Woods, Bavarian Woods, and Barbarian property acquisition. These are properties that were acquired with state funds. Now, some of them they maintain the mineral rights on, others they don't, and we're still investigating that. Well, my understanding from some preliminary emails that were provided by Ms. Carlock and is that the city then does retain rights as far as anything above ground.
Right.
And then it depends on how the property was acquired and what rights were retained. It doesn't automatically guarantee them access, but that's where we need to do some more further investigation on. Our approach was regulated to industrial properties, but we still haven't addressed what happens to city-owned parks that were acquired using state or federal funds.
Right. We need to do that because we have quite a few areas that are wetlands, or very sensitive natural areas that we want to preserve, so we need to find out.
We need to pull all those deeds,
We
because that's
definitely
where the
do.
mineral rights
Yeah,
were
yeah.
reserved, and whether they had access to harvest the
And
mineral
I don't
rights.
wanna wait and find out too late
Right.
that we are,
Right.
we're stuck.
Right,
Because if we have some rights that we can defend
right,
or pursue, legally, if we have to, we need to know that.
absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
I didn't hear Horsetail Woods, because I think we bought part of that with a grant.
Well, again,
We did.
these are just preliminary. We have to do a full investigation, we need more time. And these questions were raised through the process. And Mr. Zorn has brought up issues about uncapped wells that we may have in this community. And there's other things that we might address. We're concerned about the hydrology, we're concerned about wetlands and other impacts. We just don't know enough at this point to craft a complete
Yeah,
ordinance.
I understand what you're saying, I'm just concerned that we get ahead of this rather than be behind and they're ahead of us. Okay?
Mr. Lang.
Yes, we are a sovereign city. Why do we give in to the state when they come around and want to do the going down below and everything? Why are we a sovereign city then? Why don't we just give the state everything they want? But we can't. But why do they take it? Why do we have to give it to them?
We're as sovereign as they want us
Well,
to be.
I mean, if when they deeded if they deeded the property to us and reserved the mineral rights and reserved access to those minerals.
Why do we give it to them?
Well, that was a condition of them giving us the property.
Well, let them, we don't have to give them the property.
No, when we acquired the property from the state, many times they will automatically require that the mineral rights be reserved for the state. And I think now it's become more of a source of revenue that they're really starting to harvest these minerals.
Why in the first place did we give them the money?
That was the condition upon which they would have given us the property.
So we don't buy the property, we don't give them the property, what happens then?
Well,
They're giving us the preference.
right, they've already done that, and the deed that they gave us on some of these properties would have expressly retained the mineral rights by the state. It would be right in the deed, that they are giving us, they're transferring the land to us, but they're reserving and retaining all the mineral rights. So So when we find those deeds, what we wanna also look at is, did they reserve the right to mine those, harvest those? What else was dealt with? And then we can know, we can go, they may own the minerals, but how they actually then harvest those minerals could be a subject of what we regulate. But they own the minerals.
Can we do something about that?
Well, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to kind of slow this down. I think a good start was made. We all felt we were, getting to a certain point. But I think when you start looking at these other issues, that we want to be as cautious as we can and make sure that we can protect to the full extent. Remember, you got a state law here that takes, again, away a lot of our authority when it comes to mining operations and extraction activities. But to the extent that we can, we want to make sure we have a good, strong ordinance. That's the goal.
Is that it, Mr.
Yeah, I was gonna say that it's so important for Southfield to be opposed to any mining in this city. I mentioned at the council business meeting is that, we have a lot of artesian wells in this city. And places like San Marino and the ravines, there's artesian wells on 12 Mile Road between Telegraph and Northwestern. We have a mining operation going for water, which is absolutely water comes from Southfield. That's why everybody left it. But anyway, it's something that endangers all our underwater in the city. And I just think that all the cities ought to get together and do some heavy lobbying, because those guys are up there all day long trying to get the foot in the door, and we sit back and we are not joining the effort to kill it. And that's the only way you're gonna stop it, is to get these legislators up there, the governor, to let us have more of our rights, which we deserve to have, and they get away from us. They've taken everything else from us.
Do we have any programs for prohibiting them? Do we have any stoppage?
Well, that's the intent of the ordinance, to regulate.
Before this? Why not? We're 50 years old. Why not?
I don't think there's been a lot of activity just until recently when we became aware
So
of
why not? Oh, we just became aware of it.
somebody wanting to do some mining out
And
there.
in fact, I think the technology has changed to the point where now fracking, it's been around for a long time. It's
We
much
can
more
get a lobbying
profitable.
team, because they may put one, they're over at Miller's Farm already, so they may put one of those drilling things right in the middle of the senior garden. They're over there testing already, so. And of course, when you are given land, as Mary Thompson did, who knows where the mineral rights are on that thing.
Well, if she didn't reserve those to her heirs or whatever, normally, the mineral rights pass with the fee. So if you acquire the property, you have the mineral rights, unless they retained them and sold them elsewhere. So I don't recall in looking at the documents from Mary Thompson that she ever reserved or retained mineral rights.
Of course, Word of Faith wants to start mining.
On Word of Faith property, yes. They've been approached by.
So you're gonna, excuse me,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
all right, so you'll have an extension of moratorium.
And for your consent packet consideration of the 19th, and then we'll come back at some future date and discuss this in detail.
Okay, the next discussion, sale of real property is for.
Do you want to start? Want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is a piece of property that we've been approached to sell. It's on Greenfield between Albert and Judson. These properties were, all along Greenfield, were acquired back in the 90s. I recollect Don Gross working on it. I think the mayor recollects Joe Sunchuk kind of working on this. And
It's vacant.
most of it's vacant. There used to be some homes, small little homes that were used for commercial purposes, a lot of commercial on that area. And so as they came up for sale, generally, the city would pick those up and just kind of assemble this property. Two of the lots that would be on this map to the north and south of the middle parcel, those were owned by the city and were sold back in 2006. The gentleman who owned Alert Medical up on Judson bought those two parcels, and he was going to develop some medical office at the time. Of course, right thereafter, the economy took a nosedive, and he really suffered some financial constraints after that. He never was able to build it. He now has a potential purchase agreement on his two lots, but of course our lot that we did not sell is right smack in the middle. Fred has been approached by a group of Beaumont doctors.
Yeah, their developer represents a group of physicians in Beaumont, Southfield medical space. The parking would be north and south side. Very shallow lot, only 120 feet depth.
Yeah, it is.
Very shallow.
We're the middle parcel.
Right. And the reason we didn't sell it at the time, the previous purchaser of the north and south pieces, those were acquired without any kind of condemnation involved. The one that's in the middle, there was a condemnation action, and as a result of that, we've explained to the potential purchaser in this instance that the only thing we'd be willing to give is a quick claim deed. Title issues would be relevant here. But they've offered $55,000 for this parcel. That's right. And we did, Fred asked to see the purchase agreements on the north and the southerly piece. When we sold those two pieces, back in '06, we sold them for $443,000. It was like $6.91 a square foot. Unfortunately, they've never kind of come back to that. These two, the current purchase price on the northern and the southerly pieces are right about $3.58 a square foot. We had our assessor look at the middle piece, and he agrees that $3.50 roughly is an appropriate amount, and that's really confirmed by the prices of the northerly and the southerly pieces. So that would be, this lot is about 15,000 square feet. It comes up with a purchase price of approximately $55,000 if the council was interested in selling it, and then it would be combined with the northerly and southerly piece into one development.
Same people buying the whole thing?
Yes, yes. And obviously, without our middle piece, it makes their ability to put this deal together to do what they want to do.
This whole thing, this whole strip will be doctor's offices?
Yes.
Right, right.
Offices, not a clinic.
Offices, yeah, I think it's offices.
This is
So-
what it's holding up.
The southerly parcel is lots 29 to 33.
Yeah.
And then the northerly piece is 36 to 38, so is that what's reflected here?
So
Yeah.
OS, isn't it?
Yeah,
OS.
I believe it was all OS, yeah.
Couple questions, Mr. Cruz.
So, right now with the land as it currently sits, is this costing us anything, the city, in terms of maintenance of this beautiful bridge? Besides that, sometimes that. I'm just saying, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me, so I'm just trying to understand the price is right. I mean, we're not spending any other cash on it right now, it's just sitting there.
The site will be improved, it'll have improved drainage, it'll currently expensive cutting the grass. The land was originally assembled to do some scattered, affordable housing back in the mid-90s. And that never materialized. In essence, it's my understanding when the River Park townhomes got built, that satisfied that requirement.
There were a lot of objections from the residents about there were things proposed in the council that these people were very upset about. They didn't want the tall buildings, they didn't want people living in their backyards, all of that.
This is between 12 and 13.
Yes.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
middle office would be what, 2 stories, I mean,
Well, I mean, they'd still have to work with the planning department and comply obviously with all the zoning requirements.
I'm just remembering all the concerns about the people who built these buildings that would be looking into their backyards and, you know, is that all gonna come up again?
We could probe that with them if they're talking any height, but we
Okay.
could on sale restrict height and
Which-
on our parcel.
Which we actually did. I mean, the deed
Okay.
on the northerly and southerly piece already incorporates a development.
Okay.
So they're gonna have to get some issue on that. We're gonna have to approve even on those other lots, because I'm sure they're changing it. I'm sure it's not the exact same development plan that the prior purchaser put together.
It was a huge fight. I remember when he was.
They're proposing medical office.
Yeah,
I think it should be a parking problem, because they're not that deep.
they're very narrow.
What they discussed would be the parking would be on the north and south because it's not deep.
It is, yeah.
But your concern is on building height.
Well, there was the one woman that complained because she was, I don't know, she took,
You mean our windows?
yeah,
Yeah.
in her back, she was taking sun baths in her backyard.
But
Didn't
there
want
was,
people looking.
that was one thing, but there was also, they were also concerned about people, if, you know, being able to look into the things, how close they were. So do you hear,
Is there concern, I not had a discussion with them about building height, but 1, 2, or 3 story, or is 2 stories acceptable?
It was
I
a
would be
two-story building.
shocked.
It was a two-story building that they proposed before, and she was complaining that people be looking over the fence and,
that was one thing, and also that they could be looking in the windows, so, I mean, these are, it's very close to their backyard, so you've gotta,
assuming they even lived there.
That's true.
but there may be other people that have more concerns, and just think it's, you know, they had signs on it like it was just office, retail, or, you know, office supplies, that kind of thing, which would be very different than that.
Same process.
Frankly, I don't think that we should be concerned with what kind of building is gonna be put in.
Right.
Our concern is to sell the property. That concern comes through the planning department.
The only thing I would say is if, for example, if the current zoning would allow, say, a 2- or 3-story building, and you thought that's excessive because of the concerns of the neighborhood, you could say, we'll sell you this lot, but we're gonna restrict it to no more than 1 story or 2, whatever. I mean, as a seller, you have more, power over what happens with it than you do under a zoning. Because zoning may allow for 3 stories, so if that's a concern, I think we could look into that and see, you know, how that, and if council wanted to restrict that, that's certainly, yeah.
But you could put a colonial house on it in 2-story.
A 2-story.
And not
Sure,
stop them.
sure.
But the point is, you can design an office where it's not intrusive in the neighborhood, because if you make them think that they can do anything that they wanna do, and these people get all upset, we're gonna go back to the same thing, this is quite a few years ago. And, all those plans, people had to just have to say no.
Tell them they can't put any windows in things like that.
Well, I mean, just to be aware that this is
Right.
what happened to
Right.
the property before, so why let it get into it all over again? You know, now that we have the
Well, I think
power.
we could take this back, the concerns, and, we'll see,
Work our way through
see,
that.
right,
It's
what
worth
the-
having,
sure.
in my way of
Sure.
thinking, it's worth having a meeting with the neighborhood residents, which we do from time to time,
Mhm.
let them know what's being proposed and how they feel about it. Rather than have designs come in and people spend a lot of money and find out the neighborhood's all against it, just different people right here, you know?
I think that's a developer's concern. Go talk to the neighbors, not ours.
But we know what happened before.
I don't care what happened before.
Well, I do.
I still think that's the developer's concern to go talk to the neighbors and says, this is what I wanna do.
Yeah, but the honest reason they came was into the zone for scattered site housing.
Yeah, it was.
This is why the people came out, they didn't want scattered site housing and go in the
There were
bottom.
offices down, there were offices too, there were offices planned there, proposed for.
They may only be proposing a 1-story structure, imagine it would be a 1-story structure, 10 to 12 foot ceiling height, I would be shocked more than 14. Some medical places are doing higher roofs though, for storage.
Yeah.
Let me just say this, if you restrict a developer, you also restrict the architect that's gonna build the buildings. And the kind of building that you're gonna get, you need some flexibility, you put it in a box. And I agree, Joan, that you could have a whole strip of of colonial homes over there, two-story, you got the same thing. So, I mean, if you limit to 2 stories, I agree with that, but because you could go that residential. But I just believe that you have to have some flexibility. If you want good design in the city, good architecture in the city, you gotta have some kind of latitude.
But you've also got to protect the residents that are here now.
No, but what I'm saying is, what if you go 2-story colonial? Same thing.
I'm just saying, people live there and if they have rights too. They have rights too.
Yeah, but I mean, but you could build a 2-story now. Right now.
Okay.
No zoning.
So you've heard the concerns of the council.
You're aware of it.
Have that entered into the study.
Just make sure we keep the middle road.
All right, we'll move on to the communication portion of our agenda. We have 5 people scheduled, and we'll start off with Senor Leonard. You have 3 minutes to address the council. There was no consensus needed. Mr. Zorn's going to take that back on the siege. Okay, we'll move to the communication portion of the agenda. Ms. Leonard?
Okay. We've had construction going on in my subdivision since April, and the city has not kept the contractor on schedule. He's been behind 30 days ever since June, and now time is running out for pouring concrete. And Greg Marker from OHM makes all the decisions. The city does not interfere no matter how the residents complain, and Greg is not moved by residents' inconvenience. His only concern is doing things his way. Now, my concern is pouring my concrete in November. I don't feel like I'm gonna get a good job. I've talked to 5 concrete suppliers. They all are saying pour this concrete by November 1st or wait until next year. And Greg says they don't know what they're talking about. Now, I live on Lexington, but my driveway is on San Quentin, and the trucks are working right now on Lexington. So I asked Greg, I says, well, how about if you tear my driveway out now, do it along with Lexington, that way my concrete will be poured in October. No, can do. He says that, no, can't do it. In order to pour your driveway, I'd have to tear out the curb and the street. Well, that's simply not so. If I was having work done on my driveway, a contractor would come in, replace my driveway, would not even touch the curb or the street. So I says, okay, how about if you cover my concrete when you pour it? Once again, no, can do. He says, I'll only cover the concrete if it goes down 35 degrees or lower within the first 24 to 36 hours. And I said, well, no, that's not good. And he tells me, he says, well, I just had a job on Evergreen where I had to replace driveway concrete because he poured that concrete, the freeze weather got to it and ruined it. So why do I want that? So I'm saying that, you know, if he's watching the weather and he pours this concrete, well, how does he know whether it's going to freeze or not? The weather is not determinable right now. And if you're waiting to pour concrete, they're telling me that San Quentin is going to be poured mid to late November. That's too late to pour concrete and try to tell me when it's going to freeze, when it's not going to freeze. So I'm saying that I don't want that. I'd like to have if I can't have my driveway torn up now and poured in October, I'd like to have my concrete at least covered. And by the time they get done with Lexington, there will only be 13 driveway approaches left to do in the entire subdivision. They should be able to cover those 13 driveways. I don't think that's unreasonable. And I'm sick and tired of hearing what they can't do. I want to know what they can do.
Thank you, Ms. Leonard. There's some concerns raised that you take note of those, Mr. Chairman. So we've taken note of your concerns.
Thank
you. Next person is Tawana Morris.
Good evening, Council and Madam President. My name is Tanya Morris, and I reside at 18581 Capitol Drive, Southfield, Michigan, 48075. A few things. At a recent council meeting, former City Councilwoman Barbara Talley presented a petition from residents concerned about the closure of the mini police station located at Northland Mall. I'm aware of residents concerned about the closure of the mini police station, and I'd like to know if there has been a decision regarding the relocation of the station, or if other modes of service delivery have been considered. I strongly support the residents of Northland Gardens, Roseland Woods, and Magnolia subdivisions and their desire to continue to have a visible mini police station-like presence in their community. At another council meeting, a City of Southfield employee expressed concerns and mounting frustration regarding employee salaries and benefits. I believe in any organization, your employees are your most valuable asset. If budgetary constraints allow and do not negatively impact city operations, I would be in support of contract negotiations that would improve and increase employee wages and benefits. Thank you.
Madam Chair, because it's public safety, I'd like the city administrator to say what's going on there, please.
Sure. The mini police station at Northland is owned by Northland Mall. The infrastructure at the site is completely shot. There's no heat in the building. So effective September 24th, the decision was made to shut down the station. It's simply not an environment conducive for our officers to work in. The police chief, Eric Hawkins, we are working with our mobile command unit to keep them present, and we do have permission from the mall to have our command unit on site, and the police department is taking that out as well. We continue to look for other locations. We've been very fortunate that for a long period of time, Northland Mall provided that site at the city at no cost. And there simply isn't an ability to go. We've looked at renting a number of places. We just haven't found a place that works and meets the security concerns of the police department as well.
But the people are safe and secure there, and we're having a meeting with that list that Barbara gave me.
That's correct.
According to the chief. He's having a community office meet with that group, you said?
Yeah. The police department's meeting with people in the community, and we're using the mobile command facility the best we can to get it out there.
And where is the mobile command unit located?
They're actually keeping it throughout various sites on Northland.
Various sites.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about was the DDOT Transit Center is really trying to have a stronger police presence there. So
I'd like to, a long-term solution, I'd like to see a building there, a terminal building there, and our precincts in that building. So but that's down the road a long ways.
Right, next person is Corey Rowland.
My name is Corey Relton. I'm the TPOEM union president, as you all know. I'm here to represent the employees here for the city of Southfield. I've got a couple things that I'd like to mention here to our council, one of which being at our last council meeting at the very end in our administrator's comments. He made some inaccurate comments that I'm here to address this evening. He made the comment that he has offered raises to the city of Southfield employees. I can tell you as a TPOEM union president, the largest union here in the city of Southfield, we have had no such offer. The last time anything was mentioned to our union was back in 2014 when there was a proposal for 4 years. It was 0, 0, 0, and 0. Now, the 2015-2016 budget that the city has, as you're all aware, it was proposed 0 for the employees. And then you folks adopted that. So we're all aware that it's obviously an inaccurate statement. What we have seen is we've got those on what the employees here are referring these days as the friends and family plan. We've got those select few, the elite few, that there have been money for raises. So at times we're told there is no money, other times there is money. So we see such raises as 30,000, 15,000, 10,000, 8,000, and so on. But again, there's no money for the rest of the majority of the employees. Piece of property across the street, $3.5 million that the city bought, is now sitting there still with no activity. $500,000 on art at Northland Mall, we're all aware of that, still sits in cold storage some 6 months later. And what do we see? We see that nothing is happening, no movement. $20,000 to $30,000 just to ship it over there. Talks of fireworks, and the list goes on and on and on of all the spending that the city says they have no money for us, but they have money for all these other things. Point being of all these different things being mentioned, that if the city has all this money for unnecessary things, they certainly have money for the necessary things. The backbone of the city, the employees, the ones that take care of the taxpayers. So, if there is that money, then you should be spending on those employees. We see cities around us, I called around, our union is checked, they're giving modest raises to the employees. And they're not asking for the draconian cuts that this city is asking for further cuts of the employees. In the news recently, and you'll see that in that handout, the city of Livonia, a city that's really standing out these days, they just had a press release. What are they doing? They're talking about lowering the taxes and giving out raises at the same time to the employees. So, another good example. But the question comes out about leadership. Why is it that these other communities are offering raises, but the city of Southfield is going backwards? I'll have to say, you have to ask yourselves as taxpayers, seriously consider what's going on. Soon, you have the elections. Ask yourselves, what sort of people do you have representing you? And if you go and you look at these people, are they effective in their leadership? If they're not effective, then you need to ask the question. If it's no, then you know what you need to do at the polls.
There was some, we had talked, Mr. Zorn, I think, probably a couple months ago, and I was saying, is there any way that we could possibly consider looking at raises?
Well, I think it's really not appropriate to discuss labor relations strategy. We do have one scheduled for a closed session this evening. So I think rather than do that in an open format, it's really problematic to, so.
Just to add on to you, I agree with you, we need to keep those things, in closed session and so forth, but I think it should be at least heard. I think, I don't want to speak for everybody else, but we, I think it's clear that we all do support all of our employees here in the city, and would like to be in a position to where we have a contract for them. I mean, anybody working today, I mean, I'm in the same position as a lot of these folks in my job, and we're trying to get us a contract and these types of things. And it is something to be said about that in terms of morale within the organization, quality of life issues and things of that nature. So I mean, I hope that, and I'm sure we are doing everything that we can to get to that point. So hopefully, maybe we'll talk more this evening about this issue. But I just wanted to be on the record, just saying that certainly something we want to make sure that we get to that point as soon as possible.
The particular bargaining group for discussion represents employees within our general fund, our library, and our Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec, with virtually no capital improvements, is $463,000 going into fund balance. We've got a fund balance a little over $4 million. Well, you can continue to do that for 8 years. For library, everyone at this table has said we want to restore those 21 hours. The cost of restoring those hours are a little under, I think it's $589,000, a little under $600,000. The library, after refinancing with $250,000 of savings, is still in deficit of $113,000. I respect that our employees are the backbone of our operation, but I would have no backbone if I didn't lay the facts out there for council. There's a dilemma. We are doing some wage surveying and some analysis, and there are some very interesting things about compensation. I've said to council that our fringe benefit rate since 2008 has doubled from 23 and 24 cents for every dollar in payroll to 46 cents and 48 cents. So although our employees haven't had raises, we've had increases. And I will tell you, people aren't gonna like it when I say this, there are a number of employees when you start looking at compensation in comparison, even after the city lost 40% of its tax base, from a tax base of 3.8 billion to 2.4 billion, are still the highest paid after 7-8 years of raises, the highest paid in the county. And we've got some of the preliminary information to show that. So this is about what is fair and equitable to our residents. I mean, the tax burden in this community, we head to the east, the millage rate drops 20 mils. We're on par with our neighbors to the east and the north of us, Berkeley, Ferndale, where we're clustered at that rate. So there's this balancing act. And I will tell you, the CPI increase, and I've said this to the bargaining groups, we need your help in Lansing with proposal A, Hadley Amendment. There is legislation dealing with these big boxes. That's been in there. And I would love nothing more to give employees 2-3% raises. That would make my life a lot easier. But I can't give what's not there to give, especially in certain groups that don't have it to give. And I've told you the two that don't, library and the rec department. And I've looked at this. We shut down a senior center. We're looking to get out of John Grace. It looks like we'll be out of John Grace by next October. That's not going to be easy. Do we shut down the ice arena, the rec center? Because in order to balance that budget, we're probably talking about shutting down Beechwood Center. Because that's about the number it would take to make so that we could live with what we have. I don't think there's an appetite for a millage, but I do want to say this too. The 345 millage, we have passed increases on. I'd like to be Livonia having our millage rate go down. Their millage rate is going down because of Hadley. That's forcing that down. So I bring these things, and I say this, I don't like negotiating in the public. That's not the way the collective bargaining process is supposed to work. I'm told that I can't go and meet with people individually, and I know bargaining teams are meeting and having conversations and having this. It's not the way this is supposed to work. So I've said a lot. This is about being fiscally solvent. I've been accused of taking emergency management classes. Well, I would tell you any city manager, administrator worth his or her weight should be prepared to be in that position if the circumstances call for them, because we have our two primary responsibilities: fiscal solvency and providing services. And we're committed to being solvent. And I really, Treasurer Lohenberg last meeting brought up we didn't lay anyone off in 2008. Troy, with a tax base of $4.3 billion, who lost 25% of their tax base, who has a millage 25 mils less than us, slashed and burned all kinds of employees. We kept everyone on. It's created gross, disbalanced, disproportionate pain for certain departments. We're trying to balance certain things. So I ask people, the council, in particular the audience, that this is a much broader picture than what people are saying. Everyone in this room would love to be giving raises, but we simply can't give what's not there. We will try to come up with something that's fair and equitable and that's sustainable for this community.
All right, thank you. Gerard Mullen?
Gerard Mullen, Post Office Box 155, Southfield, Michigan, 48037. I have in my hand the latest version of one of Council's forms. That is City Council procedures, request for recognition. In other words, the form that one must fill out and then submit to the city clerk's office prior to noon on the Wednesday preceding the city council meeting if one wishes to speak during communications at that meeting. Typically, this form must be submitted 5 days prior to the meeting. You will note on this form that a reference to midday has been changed from 12 p.m. to noon. This council has now finally concurred with me after my 3-year campaign that the word noon is the correct term to use when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, rather than 12 p.m., which is an illiterate but a commonly used term for noon. All that one has to do to verify this is to Google NIST. That is the National Institute of Science and Technology, Uncle Sam's timekeeper. Type in the word noon in the search box. All of the above can be made moot if council is willing to cut the Gordian knot by emulating the Oakland County Commissioners meeting in Pontiac, the center of it all. In Pontiac, there is no arduous sign-up procedure requiring one to fill out a form 5 days prior in order to speak during communications 5 days later. In Pontiac, there is just a simple procedure, a sign-up list that one signs either before, during, or after the meeting in order to speak during communications. It's that simple. In Pontiac, there's no need for a Pamela Gerald amendment. The amendment fabricated by this council last year to suppress a free people's right to speak. Whereas in Pontiac, there is freedom of speech. Thank you.
I just want to say real briefly, I drove by 8 Mile and Evergreen, the gas station that we took a tour of, and the island is still there. Now, I know you guys are talking about MDOT and closing out that whole deal and getting an inspection of that island, which I think is totally ridiculous. It serves no purpose. I want to know, why didn't you get the Detroit Transportation Service Center involved in the tour when you drove over there to look at that island at the Marathon gas station? That's my question. The second thing that I wanted to bring up, I have been talking about employee wages since 2008. I am not and have not been a candidate for city council. I'm happy to see people talking about it now. More importantly, I'm happy to see the employees standing up for themselves. You can't just go to a couple of meetings and talk about an issue without knowing the entire story. The entire story is some of these employees have not ever had a raise. Now, Fred Zorn, I don't even like what you said. I didn't accuse you of going to emergency manager classes. You have attended 2 of them. Have you not?
No, I have, there's no such.
Okay, so you have attended the 2 emergency manager classes. Now, you said there's no money for a raise. Your wife's friend, it's purported, Shelley Freeman, got a raise. And she got a position promotion. She became a director of what? And she's never even had people working up under her. How can you become a director and you don't have a staff up under you? But she got a raise. Now, did she get the raise because she happens to be really good friends with your wife? I don't know. So wherever you found the money to give to Shelley, there's got to be more in that kitty to give it to the employees collectively. I think he's right. You guys picked your people to give raises to, and that's not fair. You talk about the public safety millage. There was supposed to be firefighters hired from that public safety millage. It hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to lastly suggest the money that the firefighters accumulate in those transportation runs, why don't you let them use that over $2 million instead of putting it in the general fund? Let them use that to hire firefighters. Let them use that to buy vehicles that they need, because they're in need of 4 vehicles right now. You know, there are things that you can do, Fred Zorn, but you don't want to do it. You're waiting for the appointment to become an emergency manager. But we all know in this room, emergency managers come from Republican administration and not Democrats. So you can sit there and laugh and think that you're smart. I'm just hoping that the city gets smart and your days are numbered. And you still don't live in the city of Southfield. You still don't live in the city of Southfield. Thank you.
Can we have her escorted out, please?
Please, she can go out.
The meeting's over now. Thank you guys very much. That's right, the meeting is adjourned. Closed session, take a roll call. Come on, my people, let's go. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Susan. Now, they're gonna put you out because it's a closed
Yeah.
Not the rest of the poll. She's telling me now.
The meeting is not over. We still have some other items to discuss. The meeting is not over.
She did touch him.
Okay, I told him I'd talk to her.
Okay, well, you gotta do more than talk to her, but I understand.
You're on the off, I can sit down and we're gonna see. Let's go to closed.
Right, I just want to make sure.
All right, we're still in session on the agenda council. Items we brought to the, for discussion tonight. I do have two items. The first is, at least if you recall, there's a light out at Coventry Woods on one side, over off of Bell Road. And I was told that it's been out for 2 to 3 months, and that DTE knows about it, but it puts you on the back burner. So if we can, there's Coventry Woods and Bell, Morningside, Coventry Woods and Morningside Road. Yeah, over there. Also, you know, we did lose our fire chief back in July, and we've got an acting fire chief. But I'd really like to see us go out for a search for a fire chief. Just making sure that we get the best person to fill that position.
Madam President, I can't hear you.
I'm asking, or suggesting that we go out for a national search for the fire chief. Because we put Barry White in as acting, but I think we should go out for a national search to make sure we get the best person. It's just my,
Now, we appointed, is not qualified.
no, I'm not saying he's not qualified. I'm saying we go out for a national search.
Is it really a good idea to bring in somebody that doesn't know our city, because we have someone who knows our city?
I'm saying we should go out for a national search.
No, if he's a qualified, and he was with us for years, why not?
Because he was just put in that position as an acting
How
fire
long was
chief.
he a
The
fireman?
other one was Joe.
How long has he been a fireman?
8 years?
No.
About 28 years?
The thing is qualified to be appointed.
It's not that we're speaking about quality, he remained acting in the interim position. My thought process was to get through the November election, working with the whoever's elected, we would go through some type of what are our priorities. But I do believe we are heading towards a search, national.
Any reason?
Well,
It's good to promote from within when you
well,
can.
and from within is certainly welcome to apply. I mean,
We didn't do that before. did we?
yes, we did.
We
We
did.
Did we?
did. Yes, we did.
But we solicited the resumes, but then I think that Keith was just appointed. So
When did we interview, like,
I-
we solicited resumes?
When this happened, I knew I wanted to have one person in charge. The last time we had 4 acting chiefs. I wanted one person, cleaner. I'd like to get through the November election. We are putting together, I've got Lynn and Pierce, working on some finance things. But I think in how we fill that position will determine what our financial strategic plans are for the entire city, as well as even possibly the fire department. And I think going out to a search is fair. You know, these days, if you hit MML, the national publications pick it up. The difference is on the national search, if a candidate was coming in from another state, we pay for his or her airfare, fare and such, so. But again, I want to frame the search around what council's goals are for the fire department.
Well, we've never had a discussion about what our goals are.
Well,
for the fire department.
And we need to.
He's been with us for 28 years and knows every bit of what should happen, what should be.
Not disputing anything.
I have to assume that he met a good chief because everybody knows him. You bring in a stranger, there's gonna be chaos.
You can make an assumption that even though that he does know everything, just because he's been there doesn't mean, I'm not speaking about him personally. I'm just saying, people remember the organizations for many years and still know the ins
Oh,
and
we all
outs.
know that.
You know,
You're assuming that.
No, I'm saying, we're saying the same thing. I'm saying, we don't know what he knows. Doing a national search allows him to compete with anybody else who's a current chief or aspiring chief, and then we decide, and if he's the top person, that's great.
It doesn't work that way.
It's the same mess as this with all these contracts and stuff.
It doesn't work.
That's why I was so glad this came up today, that we're gonna go out and bid this contract out today, and I hope everything needs to go out. We don't need all this sweetheart stuff and passing. Oh, he's been here, we know him, they're good
No,
people, it's a
it's
good
not-
company. I
that's
think
not the
those are not the way to do business.
But those
And I
are
think we need to be
emotional
more,
decisions.
we need to be
No.
more transparent. But what you were
That's
saying,
not
it was
the-
emotional.
it's
We were saying, well, why, you guys know why to do it, because he's been here for all these years,
Because we know
who
his
cares?
performance. No, not because we've been here all these
He
years,
has the
because we know his
experience, he knows
performance.
every firefighter and everything he should know. I think he's qualified at 28 years. Have you found him not qualified yet?
I don't know what it means to be a fireman. I need to know, we need to set some criteria and everything. I don't know what he knows. And I don't know, you know, there are better people across the country that could do this thing.
suggest that the council-
And we would not be the first city to do a national search for a police chief, a fire chief, or other key positions within, city administration to bring the best person that we can
Well,
have.
we didn't do a national search really, that's why we appointed fire as the police chief. He was
Whatever
qualified.
we did in the past doesn't have to do with what we're about to do now. That's fine.
That's your idea.
Yeah, you know, that's cool.
I think if he's qualified, then you find, then you interview him, you think he is, he deserves to be.
He was appointed acting as an interim, he was told it was interim, and he's been told that after the election, we would address the permanent. He is certainly welcome to apply. These statements are no statement of displeasure or exuberance, or, I mean, you know, but I do believe framing it in context of what the goals are of city council.
I remember years ago, we appointed an outsider, and he was arrested for.
Excuse me, we've got too many discussions on the table.
Frankly, goals should be where we're at financially, because we're on a course where we're not putting any money into our equipment or our facilities. So it's that balance. So we might need to look at, and I don't know this, it may be a different, you know, there might be a different thought process that can help us meet some of our financial goals.
From a new person, is that what you mean? I'm just trying to understand.
That's possible, but I want to frame the hiring decision in contents of what city council's goals are. And it may take us till January, February to determine what those goals are. But you've got a group that's running you about $10 million a year, about 12% of maybe 15% of our general fund budget. So let's have a discussion along that. And you operate, we know there are some concerns about fire, and I've said this consistently in this room. We've got 27 million square feet. I don't see a systematic method for inspecting all of our buildings. And I think we need something that has more methodology or something. And I'm having these conversations with Darren.
We can dictate those things with anybody, whoever's chief, we can dictate.
And, yeah, but I just want to frame it in content to what council's goals are.
Well, one of my concerns has been all these hospital runs, or, you know, people fall out of bed, and most of the runs that they do are for that sort of thing, which to me is ridiculous.
And we have offered to the department that the administration would support an ordinance charging them beyond a certain point, and we have a team working on that.
And because they spend most of their runs are for this sort of thing. Somebody falls out of bed and they need a fire department.
The ambulance brings in $2 million a year, all of which goes into the general fund, and all of which is used for personnel.
Have you seen the, Joan, have you seen the list of things that they do, or is that just because you heard people talking?
Oh, no.
'Cause I don't know,
Been,
frankly, the whole council has not been privileged to that kind of information, that all of most of the runs are to pick people off the floor and put them back in bed.
That's been going on for years.
How did we know that? I mean, that's.
You can easily get the statistics, Myra.
Have you had the
They are
statistics?
available.
I'm just saying, let's talk facts, let's not talk.
I agree with that, but that has nothing
And
to
we
do with
need.
Well, it has everything, you brought it up, it has everything to do with it. The question I asked.
It's worth knowing, but I don't think that's going to do with the search.
My conversations with Barry about the stats is we can see the numbers, but we also need to look at how they break down in the day.
Sure.
I mean, are they happening 11 to 2 a.m.? I mean, we need a more statistical analysis of it. And, you know, I've been in the fire stations. These guys run constantly.
Sure.
And we need, you know, and maybe at a certain point, we let the private sector and entities, we've got backup, we let them handle those runs. I mean, the volume is hitting such a point that maybe there's some thought. But again, I think this is the conversation we need to have in content to, you know, the fire department and where we can take that department. I mean, the end of the day, when I see a CPI of only 0.3 of an increase and hear things about raises, there's a breaking point.
Sure.
I mean, you know, every 1% runs us another $350,000. So there's give and take. And then when I throw into factors, I haven't put any money in equipment revolving loan fund in 7 years. You got mechanical systems in building, fire safety systems not working. You know, we've got issues. You know, so it's again the right balance. So I want to frame that search in context of what council's goals may be.
Can we put a date on it? Can we say by February 1st that you need?
I'm comfortable with that as long as council will give us an evening to discuss the fire department in depth. I mean, and I'm talking probably a 2-3 hour meeting just to get into the analytics, let the department present it, make some recommendations.
Madam Chair?
I'm fine with that as long as it's after the election.
Some time ago, there was the evaluation of the fire department. I gave that to Jim. He had the economic downturn, I don't know what he did with it, but got lost somewhere, but somewhere around this place.
Is this the Mercer report?
I don't know what it is, but it did include, it did
It was when
include,
Dale was here.
but it did
When
include
Dale was here, he had both the
closing,
police and fire.
it did include closing one station. And what I'm saying is that there's nothing wrong with evaluating every department in our city. I mean, it's only right to do that from a business standpoint. And we have really been lax, haven't we, Mark?
Absolutely.
We haven't evaluated anybody.
And the evaluation and also knowing how we compare to our peers. At the end of the day, as a community,
that's right.
we're competing for residents and businesses, and how we comp and compare. Thus, some of my statements about compensation and that. It's great to be number one in certain things, but if you could go 7, 8 years and still be the leader, 7, 8 years with no raises and still be the leader in compensation, one might want to scratch his or her head.
Yeah.
Kind of give it
Well,
some
see,
thought.
nobody mentions that we had to take 6% from our taxpayers because they had lost some money in their pensions. You know, we took 6%, I think, on the tax roll to pay for the police fire pension, right? It was 6%.
How many years ago?
2 years ago, 3 years ago, recently?
More than that.
No. I don't know what they did this year. I don't think they're ahead this year. Police fire pension? I don't know.
I'm waiting for the most recent actuary reports to come out.
They don't have time.
The one on funded healthcare, we know we've got potentially $170 million liability hanging over the city side. And again, we promised employees after 10 years of service that they have healthcare for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And for a husband and wife, in today's dollars, that's a $12,000 expenditure. And I wish healthcare had an inflation factor of 0.3%. I would love to see that. We're probably going to see 6-7% increase in healthcare.
Well, also, and I'm with our attorney that we don't negotiate these things out in public. We don't negotiate these things because the state allows us to negotiate them in closed session. But we did some really dumb stuff a few years ago that we're paying for now.
Don't say
Because
we, I voted against that.
you did.
I did.
You did. You absolutely did.
Vision of the-
And I will support you
I
on
voted against
the fact that you said we can't maintain this forever, but the rest of the council voted for it. But when I say we, it's a collective we.
Yeah.
But there's one thing about appointing, back to the fire chief. There's good news and bad news about appointing from within. The good news is they know all of the people, they know the procedures, and the people know them. The bad news is they know all the people know the procedures, and the people know them. So anything that's bad gets continued. New ideas aren't necessarily brought in. It takes a special person to go against the grain in order to improve things that have been done for a long period of time. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes it's good to bring a new set of eyes in. And I learned this a long time ago, but it's been reinforced by going to Michigan Municipal League meetings and going to National League of Cities meetings, that there are some great ideas out in the world that we never thought of, that we can bring home and apply to the city. We aren't the center of all knowledge. I have found that I have taken lots of notes and brought ideas back from communities that are aha moments. So I'm not as scared about putting a national search out. If our people are the best, they'll win. It's just like we want the best.
I remember years ago, we brought in a guy from Detroit, who was fire chief. And he turned out to be a sexual predator. And he was caught, and the fire, they had women firemen with the fire ladies then, and two of them filed charges, and they collected a pretty penny from us.
Just because you made a mistake one time doesn't mean
You don't remember? I do.
Remember the study that we had, that was done about the fire department? We had a study
Yeah.
done about the fire department. What is that? How
That was the
relevant
Mercer,
is that?
that was the Mercer report.
Yeah, the Mercer report, exactly.
Yeah, they all had it done for
Yep.
the police and fire.
Yep.
Right.
Fire department were angels, and the police department was the devils.
I mean, the best chili was that?
I have that book.
They didn't wanna.
All the other books were burned. One book left.
I have
Oh, I have a book.
I have both of them.
Jim didn't wanna bring it forward, cause there were recommendations to close down the fire hall, and there were also some recommendations with the police department that.
We're close on that one.
Not addressed.
Not any of them. We didn't.
Well,
That book that I had, they were all burned, and one guy redid the book his way, and that's the book that she has
No,
in the property. You don't have that book?
I have the original.
That's gone too?
No, we have the
I
original.
have the original.
I have,
All right, you've
I have
heard
the
this.
original.
January first.
Is there anything else to be brought,
Yeah.
regarding this meeting?
Yeah, well, I just need to, I just want to comment, Ms. Freeman and my wife had a prior working experience when she was in Redford and my wife was in Taylor. They worked jointly on projects. Friends, I don't think they're on Facebook together. I can tell you Ms. Freeman was not at her wedding. She never been to my home. You know, so I'm kind of, what a gauge of a French, so I just, when these broad statements are made, but I do want to speak to compensation. With Ms. Freeman, we simply looked at where her peers were in compensation, areas of responsibility, and leveled that playing field. And to even, you know, some other people in the room, we looked at compensation, and if we couldn't find that it was merited, we brought in outside consultants to evaluate the position. And we brought it at parity, you know, so, you know, yes, there's some raises, and, you know, that one has probably been the biggest increase. But this friendship thing, I really find personally offensive. And, you know, we all have prior work, you work with someone in the past, you know people. I mean, so, I just, these statements are being made out in public, and I feel we just wanna be on the record.
Anything else?
She deserved it. She worked on the incubation project, so she deserves that raise. She's done a tremendous amount of work for us, the business.
But she wasn't being accountable.
We need a
I was
motion.
worried.
I move that we go into closed session.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Frazier, supported by Ms. Support, closed session.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Now, what's the roll call for?
Going to closed session.
Oh, of course. Yes.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Mr. Lance?
Yes.
Ms. Seymour?
Yes.
Ms. Jordan?
Yes.
At 5 to go into closed session.
Video recording.